So my name is Andrew Cawrse. I'm the co-founder of two companies, Anatomy Tools and Evolutio, and we do anatomy work and consultation and training for media companies, special effect companies, and game companies. And today we're going to share how we use ZBrush as a design, animation, and a production tool, both in human assets and then also animal assets, both still and in motion. Okay, to also share with you, Tan is going to be joining me up here to be working live in ZBrush for you with some demonstrations. And perhaps I'll just give you a little bit of my background to give you context. So if you're sort of new to ZBrush, I don't want you to sort of turn away or think it's not relevant. I really started as a graphic designer and then got into motion design. These are some of they're not all my designs, but most of them are here. But this is how I got introduced from being graphic design into motion design, as having Nintendo as a client. So that got me into 3D, and then that sort of led my segue into movie special effects. So the first movie I sort of worked on was Star Wars Episode 1, but I was hired to work on hard surface, that sort of environments, robots, and these are just a few examples of work just to give you some background. And then, of course, blowing up droids, spaceships, things like this. And then I went into organic modeling. My first movie to work on that was Galaxy Quest, and this is one of my first creature designs. This was a little demon baby character for Galaxy Quest. And also that was my introduction to facial libraries and motion. That was the first time I got to try that. And then from there, I sort of moved into episode 2, where I became a lead and started to work on more of the hero characters, if you'd like. This is all pre-ZBrush at this point, and so we were limited with resolution, and most of this was being built in NABs, for those of you who even know what that is. So finally, and these are some of those shots from the movie. And then from there, I made a series of, questionable movie decisions and career decisions, but still fun to work on. But then sort of moved from production into concept art. And so then moved into the Lucasfilm or Industrial Light and Magic art department. And the first movie I got to work on in that role was Park 4. This is quite a few years ago. This is a long time before the recent release. But I got to work with an amazing artist, Cawrse. This is one of his concept designs of sort of, dinosaurs meet human hybrid. But my job was to quickly realize these in 3D to show the director and kind of work interactively. But even back then, we were sort of still printing things out and then going to clay maquettes. So you see here, I'm doing a clay maquette of that design. And this sort of how that looked. Sort of pre-ZBrush. I'm just giving you a premise of everything we used to do before ZBrush. But then came along ZBrush, and the first time we really used ZBrush at ILM for production was a movie called Pirates of the Caribbean. And this particular asset, Davy Jones, this guy had, 150 pieces of sea life on him. So just the technical challenge of trying to pull off these characters, ZBrush ended up being this magical tool that we added to our pipeline. And fortunately, my VFX supervisor was John Knoll, and he and his brother invented Photoshop, to give you some premise. So they're no stranger to innovation, so it was the perfect combination to introduce a new tool. So the second movie I got to work on with using ZBrush was James Cameron's Avatar, and I was a concept modeler or designer very privately, just in his house with four other artists before this was even a known project. Still pinching myself that actually happened. But for me, it was terrific because it was ZBrush gave me the ability to kind of work quickly, and this is how the Na'vi first looked. So this is the first sculpt of the main character from these movies. Obviously, she's changed a lot since then, but this is how she first looked. And this was the male version, and this is all done in ZBrush. And these are quick sculpts, maybe done in a morning or an afternoon, kind of sort of buy-off or look dev. And here's just a comparison with a normal human size. But from here, this is sort of the closest we got for sign-off by James Cameron. And this is a design by James and also Neville Page. I guess I should call him Mr. Cameron, not James Cameron or Jim. But this is my first look at the Navi. So this is my sculpture, texturing and rendering all done from ZBrush at that point. So this is just a fast previous tool, and you can see how we could use this very quickly. And this is how she looked in the movie. Obviously, hundreds of other amazing artists were between that stage and what you see in the movie, but I thought it would give you a nice context of how I was using ZBrush way back at 1.0. So this was back in 2005 to give you some type of historical premise. But from there, at the same time, I was also designing and sculpting a lot of the wildlife and animals that were on Pandora. This is a quick dire horse designed by my friend and colleague, Wayne Barlow. A lot of his character designs made it all the way through to the final film. But these were sort of throwaway concept ideas that we would just try. It helped to see them in 3D, and then for Mr. Cameron to come in and say, yes, I like it, I don't like it. So it's just a fast, creative tool. And this is really where I started to get into animal anatomy and anatomy a lot further. So from this movie, I decided, strangely enough, to quit special effects and then sort of go on to sort of quitting your dream job, per se, and going on to starting my own company. So launching my own company, it was anatomy tools, and I started with human anatomy, and ZBrush was the perfect tool for me to teach with and also make sort of products. So here you can see I'm teaching live at the Noman School of Visual Effects. And this is one of the first times where artists were actually sculpting live from models digitally versus traditional mediums, and ZBrush allowing us to do that. As a friend of mine, Yoni Baker, is the model here, but again, down at Noman, where we're hosting our workshops at the time. But from there, we also were doing product design. So here, I have a series of things that became physical products for people to learn human anatomy from. And this is all without scan data. This is just sculpting in the program. And then you can see here, this is the digital output, and kind of see the scale that we were working at. And this is me doing sort of paint masters in the real world now, but a lot of the paint design I would do in ZBrush before doing it traditionally. But from there, I started thinking about how could I expand into animals, and then I was the co-founder of a new company, which is Evolutio, which you see on the first slide there. But if I was going to make reference for you guys of the new generation, it had to be sort of next level. And so we had to look for superior reference and study. And in this case, we're using a combination of scientists and natural history museums. We're actually taking animal specimens and dissections and making sure that everything we're doing is medically accurate. At the same time, I'm an art director of a whole bunch of artists who work on all the animals together. And we typically ask the artists to pick a favorite animal that they would love to do because they're passionate about it, and they'll end up being an expert in that subject matter. So in this case, we see if there's also, it's a little off-putting, but we also like to see if the animal exists without fur. Much easier for us as anatomists to try to sculpt and capture animals if we can see what's happening under there. In this case, this is a baboon that suffers from hair loss. But I want to share a bit of a case study here from how we use ZBrush in design and production workflow. I'd like to sort of highlight one of our hero artists. This is the specimen that we started with. This is a dissection by an amazing anatomist, Dr. Shui. And so this is our starting point. So we would scan this in, which is, fairly typical these days. But this is just showing you the raw scan data just for us to kick off. But at the same time, the artist who basically we assigned to this animal, she's a bit of a rock star. This is Crystal Sayu. And she's let me record some of the behind the scenes while she and I are doing meetings together. And this is her just learning more about the animal here in ZBrush. And for those of you new to ZBrush, she's really just playing with the animal, getting to know the animal, which she has to become an expert on. And she's just playing around in both paint and sculpting of the gesture of this animal and trying to get into it, almost like studying the portrait of this animal, since we're going to represent it in the best way we think possible. So although she is super fast, this is sort of ZBrush's time-lapse mechanism, so she's not quite working this fast. But you can see that she and I, although there's no audio here, we're talking over the top, and we're trying different poses and different ways of using the program here. And we've gone from a seated pose to like a walking pose, which Krista was saying she felt would be a nice, perhaps way to represent the animal. And then we're looking at how would we maybe look at an open mouth position versus closed, since the mandrill here is an amazing animal with the mouth open. And so you can see ZBrush is allowing us to seamlessly sort of just swap in and out of pieces and quickly reproject those while we're working. So from there, we'll often just sort of play, once we've played in 3D, we'll bounce into 2D, and it is quite seamless to jump between ZBrush and programs that you might like Photoshop. So here, I asked her to sort of basically turn to the side view, and I think coming up here, we start to play with the silhouette of the animal in 2D. So we'll just let this play out here. Perhaps we'll jump to the next one. So you see here we've jumped into Photoshop, and now Crystal's sort of playing with the silhouette shapes before going back into now looking at product design. In this case, this is a more refined version of the model. Oops, sorry. I guess I'm getting used to the program here. Yeah, and you can see that now we're looking at, well, how are we going to actually reveal the anatomy of this model. You can see we've got some cross sections of pullaways. So this is all designed to become a physical product in this case, right? So that's why we're starting to see the removal of hair and where we're deciding to show or highlight anatomy. Kind of cool. So we'll have some of these assets behind in the booth afterwards we can play around with and show you. And here you can see basically notes over the top of that. Okay, so this is a work in progress example. Perhaps if I can give you some models where we go deeper. So game companies and film companies hire us to assess their rigging and things for motion design. But in this case, if we have a hero animal, like a wolf or a horse or a big cat, we go deeper. And in this case, this is the artist Idan, and he's done an amazing job from literally ground up building this asset. And here we're back in the program ZBrush, and you can see that he's literally building from the animal's skeleton all the way up. And he's taken this all the way through into texturing, rendering, the fur, everything. This isn't quite our photoreal renders, as far as being super realistic, but you can see the potential of everything that he's done here. Quite an extensive model. Down to deeper anatomy, not just superficial. And then how do we bring that to life in the real world? Well, again, we've talked about the 3D printing, but in this case, this is an asset that Tan, my colleague, is going to share in just a moment. But this is the 3D print, and this is me doing a paint job on the 3D print to kind of sign off on how this is going to look in mass production. So for those of you who are just digital artists or traditional artists, I definitely recommend having both skill sets in your back pocket. They feed each other, right? So if you haven't dabbled in traditional mediums, I encourage it. And if you're a traditional person, to dabble in digital also. Okay, so this is us designing the look of an asset digitally in this case, doing the paint job all digital. And this is a terrific horse that was sculpted by a colleague of mine, again, Vaughan Smith. And here he is with the actual output of his asset. He looks pretty proud. He should be. It's a pretty amazing job. And you see we try to show deeper dissection as well as the more superficial. Okay, so again, if you're new to ZBrush, I highly encourage, remember I started as a graphic designer and here we all the way are through Lucasfilm into ZBrush, is if you open things, you might be a little intimidated by the amount of things you got to choose from. But even with the level of experience I have, I'm typically down to just a few brushes, right? That's really all I use for 90% of all the work we do. And in this case, something like this sculpture, I really just used one tool for 80% of the work. So I'd recommend you just pick a task you'd like to do, focus on that. ZBrush Central or Maxon or whatever is a great place just to try to learn about that, or YouTube. And basically get into it and not be intimidated by the way the interface looks. Okay, so the next movie I've got here is a nice introduction from my colleague Tan. This is a sculpture he did here of a dissected crocodile. And perhaps I'll just let him take over and you guys can join us behind the booth here for any questions later. So thanks very much. Please welcome Tan.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. I'm going to take over. Hello, everyone. My name is Tan B. So I'm currently working as a creature modeler at a company called Industrial Light and Magic. So I don't have that many photos or pictures to show, but if you guys are watching Mandalorian, the opening scene, there's another crocodile or alligator-ish creature. That's what I've done. So, all right, I will just continue the conversation about keeping it simple in ZBrush. All right, so I'm going to show you a few models, which is the asset that we create for the 3D printing process. In the particular case, we have the bear right here. So if you are interested, you can come over here and take a look at it. So in a way, right now, we really try to simplify all the muscle features, right, by using the tool of ZBrush. So I'm going to exaggerate it even more in today's demo by only using two brushes, all right? The first brush, Andrew already mentioned, which is the Move tool. So this is the one I'm going to use as a primary tool to tweaking the shape. And then there's another tool built into the ZBrush for a long time. It's no longer by default in this brush panel anymore, but you can find it at the brush panel, right, under a light box. And if you go to the Insert IMM, and then we have this Insert Sphere. So basically, this is my foundation. Those two brushes allows me to do majority of my work, all right? And as Andrew already showed you that most of our asset, to make sure everything is mathematically accurate, we do have a set of skeleton underneath it, right? So let me show the skeleton just to make sure. There you go. All right. There are obviously a few while I was working on it. So today I'm gonna, in my demo, I'll just show you how do I blocking in, say if I want to make a new arm, right? And then ZBrush has this very cool feature that you can take a screenshot of your existing model, or if you download 3D scan data online, so you can take a screenshot of it, say Shift+S, I'm making the screenshot, so I can use that as my reference, right? So now let me go back to the bones. So I'm going to start to use those two features I mentioned, start to laying in the muscles. All right, simply by using the insert sphere, I'm going to work on this tablet. It's easier for me. All right, so I'm going to start to drag in a new sphere and then switch to move tool. You can highly customize your interface and then giving hotkeys for sure. So while I'm really working on creatures like this, I have my hotkeys assigned so I can quickly switch in between those two brushes. All right, but in this case, I'll just keep it simple, right? Usually to keep it at the foundation level, you want to make the brush bigger. And many times I found it's easier to control the brush by changing the intensity to a lower level. So this is not only me using this process in the industry for sure. There are many, many other artists, no matter if it's doing cartoony artwork or doing more realistic artworks, they're all using this, right? So you can start to tweaking this around and then start to evaluate the form from all different angles, try to read the silhouette of the muscles, and then really try to find the origins and insertions. Where's that muscle connecting to, right? Because some of those areas, we really don't see the underneath muscle in this case, so I can fake it a little bit. But if you want to expose the underneath muscle even more, we'll do very nice research to make sure all the muscles are attaching to the correct bones. Okay, and then switching, once I have the first muscle in, I can switch back to the insert sphere and then go for the second one. Start to put, oops. All right, this is where having a hotkey will be easier. Let's go to the M and then looking for the move tool and start to drag it around. All right, throughout the process, you may find, oh, it's actually fairly easy, but continue what Andrew has said, that you do need to have the artistic foundation, right? Sometimes when you play the foundation, like the basic forms, it's not only giving you the big volume or the main feature of the creature, but sometimes it's putting the creature like together for you to read the form even from distance, right? So from there, I'll start to keep tweaking, insert another muscle, I'll start to go with the bicep. So this one won't be super accurate, but show you the idea, see how far I can go within this timeline, all right? So keep going, insert muscles, tweaking around. So what I'm looking for are not those smaller individual muscles at this point. Most of the time, I try to analyze the form and then see the major muscle groups that give you the overall shape. And then if I have to do, later I will show you how do you cut them up and then start to separate the muscles. Okay, keep going with that. So what this process does is it's really helpful for you to find, which muscle is on the top and which muscle is underneath. So the overlapping feel of this process that ZBrush giving you is kind of hard to sculpt, right? And at the same time to keep the form clean. So this is where it's super helpful to keep the resolution very low. ZBrush is capable to do super high resolution, but at this point, we don't want to deal with that yet. All right, let's keep going. Insert sphere, do another connection. Okay, I'm gonna increase the intensity a little bit just so it goes a little faster. If any form I need to wrap around the bone, I'm gonna push it. And this becomes a little stretchy, but I usually don't worry about it. As long as it gives me the silhouette, I'm totally fine with that, right? ZBrush also can, having the feature that you can either do the decimation or you can do the dynamesh, basically to erase all those stretchy points. Later I'll show you that. Okay. So as soon as this, I'm going to start to playing with the form. And then also there's another feature about this brush is each time you insert a new brush, this is where showing you the wireframe, it's actually going to give you a new poly group, right? What that allows you to do is that you actually quickly doing the selection in between different pieces. So at this stage, I have few techniques that I can use to switching in between different muscle groups. But the best one was to use the similar move tool, but this one is called move topological tool. So what this does is actually it will generate an auto masking around the shape. All right, you see the first geometry I'm touching is the one I'm controlling. I'm not really modifying the other pieces. In the other side, if I use a regular move tool, I can make major movements while it's no masking, right? I can make a major movements together. So switching in between those brushes is very helpful for me to move forward. Okay, let's keep going. This is where I'm going to show you that after laying in the major muscle group, what you can do next. Say, if I want to split the smaller muscle groups, right, to having all those smaller details. Here, I'm just going to give you this major form first. Right? Right, you can insert the muscles underneath another one. Like that. Okay. So from there, I can hold down my Control-Shift key to isolate this piece of muscle. Say I want to start to divide, making the divisions of different muscle groups. But they're still reading as a whole, right? So I can hold Control-Shift, click on this individual polygroup to hide the other pieces. And then over here, by holding Control-Shift on the brush menu, I can change to the Slice Curve brush, right? So this is where you can slicing and make new polygroups. Oops. Okay. By holding down the Alt key, you can bend the curve and to make whatever the cut you want. So the initial one didn't work very well, so let me redo it. All right, hold down Control, tap on the Alt key, so you can start to bending the curve and release, make a new polygroup. Okay. Dragging, say those are the polygroups I need to have separate pieces. And then after that, I'm going to use the feature I talked about, which called the Dynamesh, which is one, removing the stretching, right, on the geometry. Two is to separate those new polygroups into new pieces. So it's just simply going to their geometry and they go for Dynamesh. And want to turn on a feature underneath the Dynamesh called groups. And I will go for that. Usually I just go by default and see what happens. And if I need to do any adjustments, I'll do that after. Okay, since this is giving me a lower resolution at this moment, but yeah, it's really depend on what you do. If you feel this is too low, you can always go back and just Control Z and then do it again with a higher resolution. And the other thing I noticed that currently, I have several muscle groups assigned a new polygroup, right? What I can do is to go to my polygroup panel, go to my polygroups, and then I can do an auto-group, right? Most of the time, we start with the model symmetrically, so it's easier for us to control both sides, and then we will make the pose change. But in this case, after I make a new auto-group, each individual piece will be assigned a new polygroup. So you can see they are all different colors, right? So from there, I can go back to my Dynamesh, geometry, Dynamesh, and then turn down the groups. And I will go for a slightly higher resolution, just double that, and Dynamesh. And then here, you can see this ZBrush will rearrange the polyframe for us, giving the evenly distributed plots for me to move forward, either subdivide or either to keep sculpting with the existing shape. It's much cleaner. All right. So from there, I can keep going with the move topological tool if I need to make any major movements. It's a very handy tool for me to move one muscle without affecting the other ones. And there are definitely a lot of demos to show you how to use the ZBrush to sculpting high resolution details. But this is, to me, the key that to have your successful model, right? So you can literally see what's going on right here already, right? If this doesn't look correct, no matter how much more details you're adding, won't count, right? And then once for a while, I also use the feature over here under the material, which is also another default material called flat color, to rotate my model around and just to see the silhouette and try to read the curves to make sure that those are all working fine. Okay, let's go back to, all right. Here, I think I lost that initial cut, so I'm not gonna do that again, right? Because it was a little stretching, so I'll go over here, isolate that, and use my slice curve, cut it up, hold down Alt key to follow the features. And from there, I'll use data mesh with polygroups again. This will give me the divisions. Right? I can quickly, instead of insert another sphere and then try to modify the topology, here I can quickly create a new shape and I can tweak it around. This will, following the original shape, at the same time, give the additional details to it. All right? So this is a simple introduction of this feature that we are using. We are relying on this feature. So hopefully that's a nice tip for you guys to start things using simple tools. All right? Don't make this too complex. Keep it simple and have fun with it. All right? I'm just going to show you a few more pieces or a few more assets.
I'm going to Vanna White the piece.
Using the exact same process. So this is from another amazing artist, Paul Liao. So been developing this together and same process. But this model you see is actually a little enhanced for 3D printing, right? This is also where ZBrush can be handy for us to make the adjustments. Sometimes when we see the model looks good on the screen, it really doesn't mean that we printed is looking nice. So sometimes we're losing a lot of the details. So here ZBrush having this newer features are not new anymore, but it's amazing, which you can actually play with the resolution of the model. It's under deformation and then under the contrast, right? You can play with this slice bar. Let me see what happens here. I think this model is because I decimated quite a bit. What happens there, Paul? Right? Oh, I'm on a wrong subtool. My bad. Yeah, I'm on a wrong subtool. Or I think we're sliding on that model. Okay, anyway, there's another one. All same process. Okay. Let's see if this one we can use the enhance a little bit. Go for deformation and contrast. Yep. So you can really enhance the details. This is broken, but you got an idea. If we need to have better details on the prints, we usually come over here to use this feature to do the adjustment. All right. Usually, we won't go with the first print. We need to do several tests of print to make sure it comes out good, because during the production, we also lose like 20% of the details as well. So we need to make sure those are all carried over. All right.